Hello, we welcome you to our newest build guide. Impending Doom. The topic of today's video is a support gem that triggers the Doom Blast on the enemy when the associated hex ends, and we can force that by overriding it with a different hex and exceeding the curse limit. Recent rework of all curse skills massively improved its damage and scaling opportunities. You easily automate this setup with the use of Vixen's entrapment. With just a single button press, you will cast 4 different hexes, each accompanied by their repeats from Spell Cascade. It's important to note that only 3 curses will actually affect monsters, one is here just to force early explosions. Poison is a stacking ailment that deals chaos damage over time and has a natural synergy with chaos damage and curses, so we decided to scale the Doom Blast that way. Temporal Chains and Despair are a great way to improve your damage, and you can decide to use either Punishment or Enfeeble as your third curse depending on whether you want more defense or offense. Since this setup is based on skills with cooldowns, it's quite important to get some cooldown recovery on your gear. Fortunately, you don't need to stress over getting specific breakpoints, since Doom Blast can have up to 3 charges stored at once, so you won't waste it without a specific trigger rate. Doom Blast is quite an interesting skill. It's not an active gem, so you can't scale it through conventional means like Empower or Global Skill gem levels on your weapons. It has a relatively short cooldown of 0.15 seconds and can store up to 3 charges at once. The build is not particularly tanky. You can easily achieve a decent amount of maximum life and evasion rating while also capping spell suppression, but it's prone to physical damage. Defensive curses are a great way to improve that aspect, but they can be a bit unreliable. This build has excellent clear speed due to fast movement and screen-wide explosions. Its single target lacks upfront damage but ramps up pretty quickly to very high numbers. It works very well right from the start with just random rare items and scales greatly with every investment you make. The only unique you truly need is the Vixen Entrapment Gloves, but there are a few uniques that are quite cheap and extremely effective. Unique rings can provide you with a lot of poison chance, so you can shift your investments into more damage or survivability. Apep's Rage is a great weapon that works very well with Doom Blast's high damage effectiveness. Mana loss is not a problem since you use Eldritch Battery anyway. This powerful shield doesn't provide any spell suppression or maximum life, but makes you immune to curses and significantly boosts the effect of your hexes. Use it if you want more damage. This body armor boosts all socketed gems, so it works on your Impending Doom support gem as well, but all your gems have to be corrupted. It also improves your evasion and energy shield. It's important to get a keystone that doesn't harm this build functionality. Vixen's entrapment are necessary to automate your curses. They trigger them instantly when you begin casting, so they will apply first. Your wasted curse should be socketed in the top left socket to be triggered first. You can obtain valuable Eldritch implicits such as Curse Effect or Spell Suppression Chance, and 15% Culling Strike under specific circumstances, but it's pretty tough to find the correct one. This ring provides a lot of damage if you get the correct Herald modifiers. The buff effect is especially important if you lack Poison Chance. You can also boost it up with cheap catalysts. Synthesis implicits can be very powerful, but they are also very random. This ring is not as good as a well-rolled Circle of Nostalgia, but it's much more accessible. You can get useful Corrupt implicits or boost the base stats with Noxious Catalyst. You can get a lot of cooldown recovery with this jewel basically for free since you will be casting your curses all the time. Optionally, you can automate applying Wither by using the version with Despair, but it's less favorable. Watcher's Eye provides an amazing boost depending on the mods you can acquire. The best one would be Damage over Time Multiplier while using Malevolence, but defensive ones are pretty useful too. The Trader Notable allows much better Flasks sustain, but you have to give up on 1 Flask slot. The randomized bonuses on nearby passives can be pretty useful too, but they are not required. The most important stats are the defensive ones. Maximum life, spell suppression, and elemental resistances should be your priority. Having a bit of extra life regeneration is also very useful. It's best to use evasion and energy shield bases, as those are your main resources. As for damage, you should mostly look for cooldown recovery rate, cast speed, and a chaos damage. To get better single target damage, you can use a rare wand with tons of damage over time multiplier, cast speed, or increases to chaos damage. With this option, your poisons will deal more damage per stack but at a slower rate. Use a rare shield to get a lot of spell suppression and other defensive modifiers such as maximum life or elemental resistances. You can also get a curse effect modifier which will significantly boost your damage. Proper enchant and eldritch implicits are very effective ways to improve your damage. You should also get mana reservation efficiency here. Other than that, focus on life, resistances, and optional spell suppression. It's a great piece to get some cooldown recovery rate. Other than that, just look for maximum life and resistances. You can use the Stygian Vice for the Abyss Socket, or Micro Distillery Belt for better synergy with the Traitor Keystone. Boots are also a great source of cooldown recovery rate. You can opt for Influenced Modifier which grants much higher values or simply go with Eldritch Implicits which provides slightly less of that stat, but it's much more accessible when paired with other modifiers. Rare rings provide less damage than mentioned uniques, but have much more defensive values, such as maximum life or resistances. It's also a great source of cast speed or frenzy charges for map clear. Since the usual gem level modifiers on your amulet don't affect impending doom, you should focus purely on damage over time multiplier here. You can also get a lot of attributes, resistances, and maximum life here. If you use Stygian Vice for your belt, you can make use of various useful modifiers on an Abyss Jewel. Look for maximum life paired with whatever modifiers you lack the most. You can also get immunity to corrupting blood as a vol implicit here. Use rare jewels to get some maximum life and other useful modifiers like resistance or poison damage and duration. You can also get a bit of mana reservation efficiency or lacking resistances and attributes. Large cluster jewels are a great source of damage for this build. Try to get the least amount of added passive skills to not waste any points on traveling. Unholy Grace is the best notable here as improves both your damage and cast speed. Circling Oblivion is the best notable to improve your damage, while Flow of Life boosts both your offense and defense. If you prefer, you can simply use a purely offensive one instead. The Traitor Keystone granted by the Brutal Restraint Jewel generates flask charges over time per every empty flask slot you have. We suggest dropping one flask in favor of much better sustain on the remaining 4 ones. The best flasks to use are Life Flask with Bleeding Removal, Sulfur Flask with an increased cast speed modifier, Granite Flask with an increased armor rating modifier, and a Quicksilver Flask with crafted reduced mana costs modifier. To activate Doom Blast, you have to curse your enemies first. Temporal Chains is ideal curse for that as it slows your enemies and benefits from Balance of Terror Jewel. It also makes your poisons last longer. Doom Blast is a skill built into an impending Doom support gem and can only be triggered by such. It can store up to 3 charges with a base 0.15 second cooldown on each of them. All other support gems can have an awakened version of them for a better damage boost. Spell Cascade is the most noticeable of them all but not required at all. You can use Divergent Void Manipulation to get some life leech from your chaos damage. Punishment is a curse that increases the damage enemies take once they fall below 50% of maximum life. If you prefer more defense, use this curse instead. It significantly lowers the damage dealt by cursed foes. Despair is a very useful hex that lowers the monster's chaos resistances. It should be included in every setup. All those curses should be socketed in the Vixen's entrapment and supported by the spell Cascade. One of the curses from this setup is used purely to trigger your Doom Blast and won't be affecting your enemies at all. Grace is a very important aura to keep you safe. It adds a lot of evasion rating and allows you to scale it very efficiently. Purity of Elements improves your elemental resistances and grants immunity to all elemental ailments. If you have no problems capping your resistances, you can swap it for Determination Aura to get some extra armor rating. Discipline improves your energy shield and its recovery rate. Use it only if you can't sustain casting otherwise. If that's not an issue, use Summon Skitterbots to apply chill and shock on your enemies. All those auras should be linked with the Enlightened support. It will reduce their mana reservation, allowing you to fit in more auras. Herald of Agony improves your damage and grants a lot of chance to poison. Use the Divergent quality to increase that chance even more. Enlightened support would be very useful here as well if you can manage to get a free socket. Malevolence Aura greatly improves the damage dealt by your poisons. You can also pair it with a relevant Watcher's Eye modifier for an amazing damage bonus. By using the Divine Blessing support, you can cast this aura as a temporary buff. Thanks to the Eldritch Battery Keystone, you can fully reserve your mana and pay its cost with the Energy Shield instead. Wither is a very powerful debuff that increases chaos damage taken by the enemies. You can accumulate up to 15 stacks on the enemy. You will passively inflict this debuff on your enemies with your Ascendancy, but to quickly ramp it up to maximum value, use this spell totem setup. Shield Charge is your main movement skill. It's a quick charge that scales greatly with your attack speed and movement speed. Link it with Faster Attacks support gem to make it even faster. Maximum quality on both gems is also very beneficial. Flame Dash is your secondary movement skill used to quickly dodge incoming attacks or cross terrain gaps. The first cast is always instant. Molten Shell improves your armor and absorbs incoming damage. Use the Vol version for especially dangerous situations. It is best to kill all bandits in the second act to get 2 bonus passive skill points from Aramir. Thanks to the purity of elements, you don't need to worry about the freeze, so we recommend picking up the Soul of Lunaris as your major Pantheon power instead. Its upgrade is especially useful when dealing with enemies that use elemental projectiles. For your minor Pantheon power, we recommend either Soul of Ralakesh, which greatly helps with bleeds, or Soul of Ryslatha to improve your life flasks, which is your main source of recovery. We suggest skipping poison in the early game and opting for more chaos or spell damage notables, and refunding them once you reach maps. The reason for that is you need a very reliable poison chance to get any benefit from all those poison damage modifiers, and you won't reach it that easily without plenty of notables and specific unique items. We suggest leveling up with Bane and Soulrend, which scale quite similarly and can easily carry you to the maps with no problem. Spell suppression notables found on the passive tree are very efficient and are very helpful during leveling. The same goes for aura modifiers, which will allow you to use more auras and make them stronger. You focus mostly on the maximum life notables, but some of them are hybrid, meaning they also boost your energy shield. This is very important since we rely on the Eldritch Battery to cast all our spells. Vile Bastion Ascendancy notable is another great source of energy shield regen. It also takes care of stuns, since you will have an energy shield at all times. You can socket your Brutal Restraint in 2 sockets, one nearby Pain Attunement, or one close to the Supreme Ego. Choose the one with better secondary modifiers on close-by notables. That concludes our guide. We hope you found it helpful. If you have any questions, please leave them in the comments. We are happy to answer them all. Have a good day, and see you in the next video.